Hey, everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Build It with Tim. Today, we're talking about a pretty complex workflow that has to do with user signups. And this suggestion comes from Ivan. And thank you very much, Ivan, for the suggestion. I will admit it was actually pretty challenging. This was a really good one to do, really good one to build. The idea here is that well, I admit the title of this particular video might not be the best to describe what's happening, but the idea here is that all from the sign up page. Okay, so from the default sign up page in Tadabase, a administrator of a company can sign up. And because they are signing up for the first time and they are an administrator, then a company record will get created for them and automatically connected to them as a user. Okay, and then subsequently, all further signups for that company. If you're a staff member, for example, when you sign up, you will automatically be connected to that company. And all of this works by identifying the domain name that's associated with the actual user's email address and using that domain name to kind of handle all of this logic. Okay, so when an admin creates their user account, we get their domain name, we create the company with the unique domain name, and then all staff signups from that point forward are connected to that company based on the domain name. All right. So to do this, we're going to be talking a lot about actual like database processes and form processes specifically. Okay, so how are things processed when you submit a form? And a sign up component is essentially just that, it's a specialized form. Okay, and the next thing we're going to be talking a lot about is rules. Okay, and this ties directly in with the form processes themselves about what rules do we need to run, when do they need to run, or when do they run, and how do we utilize them and take the full advantage of those processes. And then lastly, we're going to be using some pipes, okay? Because again, all of this is happening directly in the sign up component, which I will pat myself on the back for, but we need to utilize pipes in order to get the domain name itself from the actual user inputted email address, and pipes to go look up different values from the sign up component itself. Okay, so anyways, I think that's a long enough intro for now. We'll take a look at what this looks like when we're all done, and then I'll see it in the builder. Okay, so here is the finished product. And in this case, our finished product is only the sign up form because everything's happening directly on the sign up form itself, or rather behind the scenes using display rules, validation rules, and record rules. So if I am an admin of a company, I can create an account and a company at the same time by filling out the form. The admin code is specifically for validation rules that will be covered in the video. But you can see I can sign up for an account, and that lets me in. And now if I log out and I do this again as a staff member, you can see the same thing is going to happen. It's going to let me create an account, and then I'll go show you the actual data that gets created, and you'll see that um, the admin has successfully created a company record connected to the user, and both users, admin and staff, are successfully connected to the company. Okay, so all of that is happening from the sign up form without any further interaction from the user, and with built-in validation rules to ensure that companies can't be created more than once. Staff members can't create companies, and if a staff member enters their email incorrectly, then it will notify them that there was no company found using that domain. All right, so it's a pretty complex build. Let's jump into the actual build itself and we'll go over everything. Okay, so before we actually get to the builder, I wanted to talk about that first thing I mentioned in the intro about form processes. All right, so I wanted to show you an example of, let's see, form component. I wanted to show you this article in our help center about how forms are actually processed. Okay, this particular article about form components is incredibly detailed. There's a lot of information here to go over, but the main thing I wanted to cover was how forms are processed. Okay, because we need to keep this in the back of our minds the entire time that we're building this particular workflow about what is the order in which things happen when we click submit on a form in order to take advantage of that process and make sure that we're building our workflow to fit within those processes and get the expected results. Okay, so we're going to kind of skip over number one and number two. We're just going to look at number three for now, although I would invite you to go look at this in depth on your own time. So when you press submit, okay, the first thing that's going to happen is record rules. All right, so record rules are going to run. This is update this record, update connected records, insert record, insert connected records. Okay, those are our 4 record rules. Those are going to run. The next thing that's going to run is table rules. So when the record or the form is submitted, the record rules are processed, the record is created, then we're going to process table rules. Okay, this is an important distinction here because we need to know or remember which one runs first, and record rules will run first. Okay, and then the last thing I want to draw your attention to here is equations. Okay, so the first time I tried to build this, I tried to use an equation to extract the domain name from the email address. This was especially challenging, and I was not able to do this whole workflow directly from the sign up page because I was using an equation field. Okay, the equation field runs after record rules, after table rules. So that domain name is not actually extracted from the user email address until after the record is created, after record rules, after table rules. Then we get the domain. So I had to like do the sign up component. The user creates their record. Once the record is actually created, we get that domain from the equation field, and then we can go through with the rest of the workflow, like creating companies and checking validation, this, that, and the other. Okay, but that option clearly is not going to work because we wanted this to all work from the signup component itself. Okay, so this is the point that I'm trying to make about the actual form processes, is the order in which things happen when forms are submitted is very important depending on the workflow that you're trying to build. Okay, so I had to scrap that entire idea, reference this again, and start over. Okay, so let's take a look at the builder now, and I'll go over the data structure first, and then we'll start to build in all of our rules into the sign up component or sign up page. Okay, so let's take a look at the user record. There are some unique things that I've done here that didn't actually come directly from Ivan's suggestion, but I'm going to talk about those more in depth when we get to the actual sign up component. So a lot of this is pretty basic on the user record. We have the default name, email, status, and role. And then after that, I've added a connection to the company table. I've added a radio field called select the following. Okay, and we have these 2 options. I'm an admin of my company, I'm a staff member of my company. And then I have this text field called admin code, all right? And I'm gonna, again, I'll come back to this in a few minutes. Then we have a text field called domain. This is where we're actually gonna store the extracted domain. And then company name, which is also just a text field. Okay, on the company record, all right, we have a company name, text field. We have a connection to the user. Okay, so we actually have a circular connection here where users connect to companies and companies connect to users. And the reason is um, we want to know who created the company. So we're going to use that connection to the user just solely for that purpose, but also so that we can gather some user record fields, some user level fields. So when we have this connection from companies to users, that means we can reach into the user table, pull out like the user email, the user domain, the user company name, any of the fields that are available here on the users table, we could then store and transfer over to the company table. Okay, and then the other connection, right, users to companies, this is done so that when somebody logs into the application and we want to show companies that are connected to them, we need the connection going in this direction from users to companies. Okay, companies that connect to the logged in user needs the actual connection on the users table. All right. So this connection here on the users table is more for page functionality, page builder, and filtering functionality. And the companies to users connection is mainly just for data transfer from the user record to the company record. All right. So continuing on, we just have the created by email, which honestly, I don't really need that anymore. I had built that originally for couple of my first test builds here, and I don't really need that. But the domain name we do. So we're going to do the same thing that we did on the user's record, where we take the email and get the domain, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take an email and we're going to save the domain as an actual text field here. All right. All right. Moving on to the page builder. Let's start building out some of these rules. Okay, as I said, everything is happening on the signup component itself, and I'll walk through the design of the signup component first, and then we'll start building out the rules. All right, so we have name, email, password. We don't have to worry about profile picture right now. These are obviously all of our default fields that are required when somebody actually creates an account. And then we have the additional fields that I've added here, which is that radio field, select the following. So we're saying I'm an admin or I'm a staff member. Then we have company name. So if somebody is a admin, then we'll allow them to enter a company name. And we're also going to allow them to enter an admin code. All right, so my idea here with the admin code was kind of it came from the actual suggestion for this video itself, but it was the idea that um, admins are the only people who can create companies. Staff members can't create companies, and this was an additional level of control that you could provide to any admin role user in your application to allow them to create companies. So this is a totally like predefined code, I guess. Um, I'm going to use it in validation rules. So this could be designed, this code rather could be created by like the actual admin of the company themselves, and then it could be built in here, or it could be provided into. Um, let's see, if you're like hosting a multi-tenanted application, then you could provide this code to those admins in order for them to get through the sign-up form. Basically what this comes down to is that the admin is going to know the code to match the validation rule, and the staff members are not going to know the code. All right, that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's pretty basic in its design, and there's likely some other ways that we could do this, but as you'll see, it's already pretty complex, and this was a kind of a simple and clean way of doing such a or building or implementing like a little security feature. All right, so back to the rules. Apologies if I'm looking off screen. I'm cheating a little bit. I have I have my build, the finished build on the right, and the one that we're looking at here in front of me. I This is a lot to remember. I needed a cheat sheet here. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build in display rules to handle these two fields, right? The company name and the admin code. So we only want to show those when somebody actually selects I'm an admin. So if they select I'm an admin, then we're going to show company name, and we're going to show the admin code field. Otherwise, they'll be hidden. All right. So here's our sign up form just as we are working on it right now. So if you select I'm an admin, we have access to these two fields. If we don't, then they're hidden. All right. And the last thing we'll do for the display rules is we're also going to require them. Okay. So we'll require company code or company name, and we will require admin code. Okay, so now we have essentially two conditions being placed on those two fields, where if they're visible, right, because somebody selected the correct option, if they're visible, then, or they will be visible, and they'll also be required. If somebody selects the other option where they're hidden, then they won't be required, and they'll be allowed to submit without filling out those values. All right, that's actually it for display rules. Submit rules, we're not really doing anything with right now. Obviously, when somebody signs up and we're filling out this information, I am going to build something into a record rule so that we can actually define the user role based on that, based on this field to select the following. And from there, you could say, well, if somebody is um, if the role is admin, then take them somewhere, and if they are a staff member, then take them somewhere else. But because I'm only focusing on the sign up page right now and not any other pages within the application, we're going to leave it alone. Okay. All right, validation rules is going to come last, but for now we're going to do record rules. So actually, before we do record rules, let's go and just talk briefly about the pipes that we need to install here. And those are going to be the Tadabase REST API pipe, okay, and the Tadabase text utilities pipe. The text utilities pipe, we're going to be using the regex mask function here in order to extract that domain. Um, don't ask me questions about regex because I don't know the answer. It's we're basically finding characters, so we're looking for everything after the at symbol, grabbing everything after the at symbol in an email address and returning that. So you can see if I test this here, where I say, my email address here, and let me get the regex that we have used for this. Hang on just a second. Let's get this. Okay, so here's the actual regex that we're using. Then you can see it returns everything after the at, okay, the at symbol. So this is what we need to use in order to actually extract that domain from the email. And it doesn't matter what we put before the at symbol, it's always going to grab everything after. All right, so I'll pause and kind of zoom in on this a little bit just so you can see it. But I'll also include this in the documentation for the video as well. Okay, so this is the first pipe that we're going to be using is the Tadabase text utilities with the regex mask, and here is the only text we need for that pipe to work. All right, now the REST API, what we're going to be using is filtering by a single field. Okay. I think that's the only call we use for all of this. So as usual with the REST API pipe, we're going to include our API credentials in the global parameters tab here. And the only other thing we're going to need to map out here is some additional responses. Okay, so if I go and let me show you an example of a response that we would expect from using this pipe. And the only place we're going to be using this pipe is, well, we're going to use it a couple times, but we're going to essentially just go look into the company's table. And well, I don't have any data here, but this will return. Um, what do I want to do here? Let me show you an example here. One moment. Okay, sorry about that. Let me start over. Okay, so we're only going to be using the REST API to take information that comes from the sign up form and then use it to go look up into the company table. So we're going to go filter by specific fields, the domain field to be exact. We want to use that domain to match what the user has used in their email address. We're going to extract that domain with the text utilities pipe. Then we're going to use that domain to go look it up in the company table and find a matching record. So here is an example of a test record that I just put in the data builder in my company data table. And you can see we have this response, right? So to map this out, we're going to look at the all the data under items here. Okay, so items, and then we have an array. Okay, so we need to get the index of that array, and since there's only one, it's going to be 0. And then we're going to have all of our actual record values here, right? So this is the record ID that we're going to need. This is the company name, and this is the domain. Okay, field 56 is the domain. You can see that is the field that I'm using to filter. So go into the companies table, look at field 56, and filter for records where the domain is whatever we provide. Okay, so in this case, this test is tadabase.io, and we found one matching record, and now we need to return the ID, and we're also going to return the company name because we're going to use this in validation later. We don't actually need to return the domain. We're simply just using that as a filter value. Okay, so in the response, we're going to do items.0.id and items.0.field39, okay, based on the keys that we just identified here, .id, .field39. But we have to map them using the array index of items.0. Okay, just to note, this is all going to get a lot easier in the future. Okay, and one last thing just on that particular pipe is if you don't know how to get your field IDs, you can simply go to the data table, the fields tab, this little settings icon, and show field slug, and you'll be able to see those actual field IDs there. Okay, so um, moving on, we're back to the sign up component, and we are going to start building out our record rules. All right, it's going to be 5 total record rules and 2 validation rules. To start off with the record rules, okay, somebody comes to the sign up page, they enter in their name and their email, and it's from that point we need to actually extract the domain from the entered email when they hit submit. Okay, so remember back to that diagram I showed you of the form processes. Somebody presses submit. The first thing that's going to run is record rules. So the very first record rule that we'll have is that text utilities regex mask, where we are feeding that pipe the record value of the email that was used, and then or used for sign up, and then we're going to pull out the domain using this regex, and then we're going to save the pipe value of the result back to the domain text field on the user record. Okay, that's the first record rule that we're going to do. Update this record, use the regex mask in the text utilities pipe to get the domain and set the domain field in the users table to the pipe value of the result. Okay, that's going to give us our domain, and now we can use this for more stuff later on. Okay, so the next one we're going to do here, the next rule, and let's just quickly rename this rule so that we know what we're dealing with. Get domain. Okay. The next rule that we're going to do is insert that connected company. All right, now this is the actual company record that lives in the company's data table. And this is the one that we're setting based on who it was created by. So what user was it created by, right? Where the connection in the company table goes back to the users table. All right, so we're going to insert a connected record, and we're going to select that created by, right? We want to make a company record created by the admin who signed up. Okay, and based on what I just said, or that last piece that I just said, that's what our condition is going to be. So if you were an admin, okay, so if select the following is I'm an admin, okay, that's again on that sign up form, the radio field. If I'm an admin is selected, then we will continue on with this record rule. Now, we have to actually run the same text utilities pipe again, okay, because we need to again extract the domain and save it to the company table now. Okay, we've already extracted the domain and saved that value or that result to the user table, to the user record. Now we need to do it again from the same source email address, and now we need to save it to the, we're going to save it to the company record. All right. And again, a lot of this has to do with the processes in which forms used when they're submitted, is that we want that value because we're actually creating the connected company record now. We want to get that domain value now and save it. So in other scenarios, you might be able to utilize something from a form value, right, where you're setting a value into a new record from a form value, maybe from a connected value. But right now, we want to get that domain and we want to save it. So we want to be very direct about it. So we're just going to run the pipe again. So we're going to do the same thing we just did, where we're getting that domain with the email address and then the regex. Let's go back up here and copy paste this again. Okay, to get that domain. All right, now the values that we're going to set here is created by, we're going to use the form value of the record ID. And what this means is when the form is essentially it's a collection of fields that when submitted create the record. So we can actually extract that record ID by saying the form value of the record ID. So we can set this there. So we need to set this connection field, the created by, to join from a record ID. We can't set it any other way. It has to be set from a record ID. So we're going to use the form value of the record ID. We can't really rely on the logged in user or the user's field because there's so many things that are happening here. We want to actually really get this before the system actually registers the fact that we're logged in, okay? Because, right, somebody's hit submit, their user record gets created, and then on like the front end on the live app, when you're experiencing that as a user, then you're automatically logged in, right? But up until that point, we want to keep this as focused and direct as possible. So we're going to do a form value of the record ID, and the domain for the company record is going to be set from the pipe value, just like it is here on the user record. So we'll say this is user record for the first rule. And then we're inserting that connected company. And then we will also set, whoops, not that, the company name. Okay, I mentioned that we're going to be using this in validation rules later, and we are going to set that now. And again, we're going to pull that from the form value itself. So again, display rules are set up to show the company name record when somebody selects I'm an admin. So if we go back to this record rule and reference that same condition, so this record rule is only going to run when somebody selects I'm an admin, then we're going to insert that connected company record, and we're going to set the company name in the company record to the form value of whatever that admin typed in on the sign-up form. Okay, third rule, luckily, is much easier. We are simply just going to use that same radio field where we are selecting whether or not you're an admin or a staff. So we're going to say update admin role, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We are just going to use that selection in order to set the actual user role. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way and not actually providing the role field directly on the form is because the role field is a one-to-many connection, meaning that somebody could select multiple roles. Okay, so we're going to do this radio field, and then using the results of that radio field, we'll use that to set the role behind the scenes. So if select following is I'm an admin, then we will update the role to a custom value of admin. Okay, and then the same thing again, but this time for staff. So let's say update staff role. We're going to add our condition. This time we'll say if it is staff member is selected, then we'll update role to a custom value of staff. Okay, cool. Now the last one, two, three, four. Yep, the last one we're going to do is we're going to connect the user to a company. All right, so we've already inserted that connected company, and we've set the created by connection. Okay, which user created this record, but now we need to set that other connection, the one that lives in the users table. So we need to update the user record, which again, this is a sign up form, so that is the user record. So we need to update this record, and we're going to run that the REST API pipe here. Okay, this is going to be the first instance of running that pipe. And we're going to filter by a single field, and we're going to pull in all of our values that we've already tested with here, where the table ID, the field ID is, in our case, field 56. Again, table ID and field ID are going to be different for you, but for me, this is what we're dealing with. And our operator is going to be is. And the field value, we're going to pull in a record value of the domain. Okay, so we have already set that record value in rule number 2, and now we're going to use that record value in rule number 5. Okay, and now all we need to do is update the company connection on the user record to a pipe value of the ID. Remember, we mapped out the response in order to get the company ID of any matching records that we find. We're going to return that ID and use it to set the join field. Okay, and that's it for here. Let me update and save that, and we'll go test this now and show you where we're at. Okay, we have not done anything with validation rules yet, but this is going to work. So far, this is going to work for admins, and it's going to work for staff. Okay, and the reason it's going to work for both is, let's go back and actually look at our rules, is, well, if you select I'm an admin, it's going to create that company. Okay, but this last rule is going to go find a company, whether you are an admin or a staff, and it's going to set that connection to the company. So that's the important one, is this last rule, rule number 5. It doesn't matter if you're an admin or a staff, that action will always happen. Okay, because we always want to connect the user to the company, regardless of whether they're an admin or a staff. What we're going to do later is restrict the ability for staff to create companies and an admin to create companies more than once. All right. So, right, let's go test this now, and we will look at the data that comes out of it, and we'll go over that. So let me just make sure. Okay. Yep. Everything's blank. Let's go to our sign up page here and start to fill this out. So we'll do this for now. Okay, admin code, we're not validating against this right now, so this can actually be anything. We're going to build that in later. So for now, we'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, this is not referencing anything. It's not being validated against. The only reason I'm filling it out is because it's required. All right, now we're going to sign up. Now that's going to run through all of our rules. And let's go back here and check out our data. Hopefully everything works. Okay, so the sign up components and the user creation process looked like it went very well. Okay, we have the name, the email, the status, the role. Okay, so we used this value to set the role that was in record rule number 3, I believe. The company connection has been set, meaning that there is a company record here. That was in record rule number 5. Admin code, again, doesn't matter. The domain was set using the very first record rule with the text utilities and the regex pipe or regex API call. We extracted that domain. That's all great. And then obviously the company name that was manually inputted. Okay, now again, I'm not using the created by email, so let's just get rid of that. Company name was set with the record rule to insert a connected company based on whatever was typed into the sign up form. Created by, that was record rule, what was that? That was record rule 2, right? We're inserting a connected company and setting the created by to the user who's being created on the sign up form. And then the domain also comes from that that same record rule number 2, inserting the connected company, where we're running the regex pipe again and extracting that domain. All right. And by doing so in particular order, by all of that stuff happening through record rule 1, 2, and well, I guess 3 and 4, and then running that 5th rule last of looking up filtering by domain. So take this domain, filter this field where the domains match, okay, and then return the actual record of the match found. The reason that this all works is because that rule runs last, okay? So again, this all comes back to processes. Form submitted, record rules run first. We can't do some of this stuff in table rules. If we did, we would need to wait for all the record rules to process, the record to be created, so on and so forth. We can't use equations because those are going to run after record rules, after table rules. Anyway, so we're paying close attention to those processes here. All right, so now let's actually go back to the sign up form. Let's see, what can I do here? I got to log out. And now we're going to sign up as staff. Okay, so test, and this is going to be test at tadabase.io. Okay, this is the same exact domain that I just used for the admin account. And then we're going to do, I'm a staff member of my company. All right, and that's going to let me submit this without issue, okay, because there's really no checks going on yet. But also we're really just, again, we're getting through the list of record rules. Record rule 2 of inserting the connected company. So this one here, this one did not fire because this condition was not met. So we only did record rule number 1, record rule number 4, and record rule number 5, where if you're an admin, you do 1, 2, 3, and 5. Okay, so all we did is 1 and 4 and 5, where we're connecting that user to the company using that REST API lookup. All right, and then we go back here, we can see, again, only one company was created by Tim Young. And now if we look at our users, we have the staff is set correctly, the company is set correctly, this radio field obviously set correctly. That was not manually entered. Domain is set correctly, and company name was not manually entered. Okay. All right, so now we need to go do some validation stuff. Okay, so there's a couple things that we need to validate, right? So we need to make sure that when a user enters their email address to sign up, and I'm sorry, I'm referring to a staff member right now. So if a staff member enters their email address to sign up, that we can actually make a match from an existing company in the company record using the domain. All right, that's going to be validation rule number one. Validation number two is going to be that an administrator can't create a company using the same name. Okay. And validation rule number three is going to be, what is validation rule number three? Validation rule number three is that we're actually allowing admins to create companies in the first place, right? With that admin code. Now, again, you could probably take that or leave it at this point. Like you could remove that entire piece of functionality and just use the first two validation rules I said. But for now, like the idea is that if, let's say, you were a staff member, you could go to the sign up page and just click, yeah, I'm an admin. I'm going to make a company, company record and sign up as an admin. And then, granted, further on in your application, like because there is nothing else that's probably going to, no data that's actually going to be relevant to that company, then probably no damage done. But still, we wanted to stop that. And the easiest way I could think of was just to have this arbitrary code that's used in validation rules, and only an admin is going to know it. So either they're going to get it right or they're going to get it wrong. Okay, so to the sign up form we go. Back to rules and validation rules. All right, let's do the first one I mentioned, which is making sure if you're a staff member that the company actually exists and that you can connect to it. Okay, so this is, we're going to use that REST API pipe again. And we're going to do the exact same setup that we did in the record rule here, where we are filtering by a single field, and we're going to feed it all of the exact same information. Okay, table ID. Let's get all of this inputted. Field ID is 56. Again, that's my field ID for the domain field in the record or company table. Our operator is, and our filter value is the record value of the domain. And that comes from the very first record rule. Okay, now this time we're not going to use any of those custom responses that we mapped. We're actually going to look at total items. So if a match is found, then it's going to be total items is 1. If a match is not found, then total items is 0. So if we say total items, if total items is 0, then we'll say company not found. Please ensure your email address is entered correctly. All right. Great. Let's go test that now. All right. So again, I'm a staff member. The Tadabase company record already exists. So we'll do staff and staff at we already showed that the staff sign up works when entered correctly. So this time we'll do it incorrectly. So I have a typo in my email and I'm a staff member. Okay, company not found, right? So that regex rule ran. We tried to get the domain. It didn't work. So we fail the validation because our domain doesn't match the domain that's saved in the company table. If I correct the spelling and sign up, then we're good to go. All right, so that is, whoops, actually let me log out because we're going to need the sign up page a few more times. And let's make this easy on myself. How about this? We'll get rid of this component I was using for testing, and we'll have a link button that goes to sign up. Do that right? Yeah, sign up. Sorry. Right. Okay, so back to our sign up page here. We have 2 more validation rules to build in. And the second one, the next one we're going to do is that admin code. Okay, so this is not going to use any pipes or anything. We're only going to say, if you select I'm an admin, and the admin code is not, and again, this can be whatever you want. So we can define it here in the validation rule, and then the admin has to know that code in order to match the validation rule. So we'll just say 123 for now. And then we will say, sorry, that admin code doesn't match our records. All right, now the last validation rule that we're going to do is checking the company name. All right, so if we go back to our validation rules for a moment, then the domain on the user record is being set in record rule number 1. The company name is being set by the form itself. Okay, so we're going to check that, and those two things are going to be unique, right? Meaning both fields are going to be filled out only if you're an admin, right? Because you met the conditions of these rules, right? So this rule number 1 has no condition. Domain gets set for every single user in the user table. The company name is only going to be set for an admin because only an admin's allowed to submit the form, right? And the reason that the admin is only allowed to submit the form is because of this admin code, right? So from that point forward, we can say, okay, if the company name is not unique, and additionally, well, the company name plus the domain is not unique, right? Those two fields are only ever going to be filled out for an admin. Then we'll say this is an easy way to say that the company's already been made, so you can't do it again. I suppose I may have made a slight mistake. It just occurred to me that an admin could potentially make a second company, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe they could, right? Maybe they're allowed to. I don't know. Um, right, but this is only going to stop them from creating the same company twice, right? Because we use the company name here to create the company record. So if we stop them with this validation rule, then the form can never submit, and that record rule will never run to create the connected company, right? There's a big chain of events here happening. So record rule 1, 2, and 3, that's it. We're actually done with the validation rules. Okay, so geez, I really want to go back and try to summarize this like a process here. Maybe I should do like a map or something. But let me try to cover this from top to bottom. Actually, before I do that, let's go back to the sign up page and we'll fail those two other validation rules. So those are for admins only, right? So again, we set the admin code to 123 in our validation rule. So admin at tadabase.io. No, let's just do test. Okay, this is me as an admin creating my account and thus a company account for the first time. So test is the name of my company. And let's say 124 I do for the admin code, or 1234, okay? It's not going to match that admin code in the validation rules. Again, we set the admin code in the validation rules to 123. So it does not meet that rule and it fails, okay? Now, let's say I'm with Tadabase and I try to create my company again, right? For whatever reason. Maybe we have some conflict here and we accidentally try to sign up again with the same company name. That should also fail the third validation rule of a company using this domain has already been created, because there's already a user record, mine actually, that contains both the company name as a field value and a domain as a field value. So this value plus the domain value that gets run through the record rule, because the combination of those two fields is not unique in the users table. There's already a user who has those two fields using those two values. We fail the validation rule. All right, and that's it. All right, I think we're good. Apologies if I missed something for this particular workflow, but I think I've covered everything. All right, so let's go back and look at this one more time. Hopefully I get this all in the right order. All right, so we have our form with all of our necessary inputs. Two of these fields are only visible to people who select I'm an admin, and that is managed in display rules. We're only showing those two fields and requiring those two fields when a selection is made properly or correctly. So if they select I'm an admin, we're going to show and require those two fields. Otherwise, they're hidden. Okay, so that handles kind of the data input that we need based on an admin or a staff member. Then we have 5 record rules that get run. The first record rule that runs for everybody, admin and staff, where we retrieve the domain name from the email address from the form and save it to the user record. The second rule only applies to admins, and that is creating or inserting a connected company record into the company table and setting the user as the created by value. Additionally, we are running the domain pipe again to get the domain a second time. This time we're saving it on the company record that we're creating, and we're also saving the company name from the form value of company name that was inputted by the admin. And again, that's only visible to somebody who selects admin because of our display rules. Rule number 3 and 4 are updating our user role accordingly based on the selection that was made using this field. And lastly, rule number 5, which applies to everybody, admins and staff, is we are updating the user record. We are using the REST API to filter companies where the domain of that company matches the user's domain. And then we're returning the company ID and using that to set the connection field going from users to companies. Okay, and then finally, we have our 3 validation rules to protect our actual submission or sign up form. The first one we are doing is making sure that the email address that is entered by a staff member actually matches via the domain, actually matches an existing company record. If it doesn't, that rule will fail. We are also protecting our sign up form with this admin code that an admin must know in order to actually submit the form and create, like actually trigger all of the rest of these rules. Um, and the last one is checking that there are no existing users in the users table that have the same company and domain combination. So Tadabase, Tadabase.io. Okay, if those are not unique, the combination of both fields are not unique, this validation rule will fail and you will not be able to submit the form. Okay, I'm pausing. This is future Tim talking to past Tim, saying I made a mistake. Okay, so I forgot to add something to validation rules. So I'm stopping the build at this point to splice in this video to show you the changes that need to be made to validation rules in order for this to work successfully. Okay, on the first validation rules where we're checking to see if a company already exists, or company not found, right? So we're checking if total items, if there is no company created yet, then company not found. Please ensure your email address is entered correctly. So this is the one where it's taking the domain of the email address entered by a staff member and comparing it to an existing company record. Now, I realize I made a mistake here. This should only happen if the user selects I'm a staff member. Okay, so this part right here, select the following. We need to add this as an additional piece of criteria for our condition where if select the following is I'm a staff member, then that validation rule will work just fine. The other thing we need to do is something similar, but the opposite. So on the third validation rule, the last one here, where we're checking the uniqueness of the company name plus the domain. That's only applicable if you selected I'm an admin. Okay, so that's my mistake. We need to utilize that select field or that radio field in all of the validation rules and not just the second one. Okay, so again, that first validation rule, we need to add the condition, select the following is I'm a staff member. And on the last validation rule, we need to add the condition, select the following is I'm an admin of a company. All right. Um, that's it for future Tim. We're going to get back to the video now, and hopefully past Tim doesn't make any more mistakes. Okay. Um, like I said, I think I'm good. I think I covered everything. It was a lot. It's a lot to kind of ingest, I suppose. So, um, I think what I might try to do is include this as maybe like a demo or like a template application so that we can actually install this and take a look at this application closely. Okay, I will try to do that and make that available to you. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode of Build It with Tim. Um, I hope you've learned a lot about the actual processes in which forms follow upon submission, how to use record rules, validation rules, build these things together, and again, build them in the correct order so that the workflow will actually be successful. Okay. Any questions about this specifically, feel free to let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. And as usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.